You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys coming by. As always, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children alike, welcome to the big podcast circus tent in the sky. As always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. All those crazy places like TikTok we are on the web. So you can see that there. Today we have an amazing multi-book author on the show, and he's got a new book coming out on October 3rd, 2023. We'll be talking about. The book is called Yesteryear. Stephen G. Eoannou is on the show with us today. He's going to be talking about his latest book, and we'll get some plugs in for his other books as well. He's done quite amazing stuff in his life. He's the author of the novels After Pearl, Yesteryear, Rook, and the short story collection Muscle Cars. He's been awarded an honor certificate from the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, the Best Short Screenplay Award at the 36-Star Denver Film Festival, and the 2021 Islands International Book Award for Historical Fiction. He holds an MFA from Queen's University of Charlotte and an MA from Miami University. He lives and writes in his hometown of Buffalo, New York, the setting and inspiration for much of his work. Welcome to the show, Stephen. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. And thanks for having me today.
There you go. Thanks for coming. Buffalo, New York. That's where my mom was born and raised. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. How do you guys deal with all that snow out there? Holy crap.
It's not snowing today. We're good.
Oh, well, hopefully not today. I don't know. There you go. So give me a .com. So where can people find you on the interwebs, please?
Yeah, I can be found at www.sgeoannou.com. That's EOANNOU.com. And there's a ton of information out there about my books, my biography, trailers for the books, all sorts of good stuff's out there.
There you go. And how many books have you written then? 3? Is it?
There's 2 that are out, Muscle Cars, the short story collection, and Rook the Knob. My first novel came out last year. Yesteryear comes out this October, and then After Pearl comes out in 2025.
There you go. There you go. So what motivated you to write this latest book, Yesteryear?
Well, surprisingly, it all started in a bar, Chris. Somebody told me that the guy who wrote The Lone Ranger was from Buffalo, and I didn't believe him.
Really?
Yeah. And so of course I Googled it, and not only was he from Buffalo, he was from my neighborhood. He went to high school a few blocks away and wrote The Lone Ranger a few blocks north of me, which was kind of interesting. You know, this is in the early 1930s. But when I found out he sold the rights to The Lone Ranger for $10 before The Lone Ranger exploded, I said, well, there's a story there. There's a novel that needs to be written about this guy.
Yeah, $10?
$10.
I grew up watching and idolizing the Lone Ranger, and when I was a kid, man, I loved the old black and white, and then I think it went to color somewhere in that whole era.
Yeah, I remember they ran it in syndication when I would get home from school and used to watch it.
$10.
Yeah, but he wasn't a dumb guy. He wasn't a bad businessman. He had good intentions. It was the Depression, and he had a young family, and he was supporting about a dozen other extended family members who had lost everything during the Depression. And he was really contracted to write The Lone Ranger for a radio station in Detroit, WXYZ, and he was getting paid like $7 a script. And George W. Trendle, who owned that radio station, was a pretty shrewd businessman, and he kind of had a feeling the Ranger was going to take off. And so he, like the Godfather, he made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He said, I'll give you a full-time job, more money than he ever made, job security for the Depression, take care of your family. but you got to sell me the rights to the Ranger for $10. Wow. And so Fran was a good man. Fran Striker is the man who wrote the Lone Ranger, and he was put in that position, and he took the deal.
There you go. So is there any historical, is this historical fiction, or is it historical in nature, or how did you frame it?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. It's certainly historical fiction, but it's also noir. I've got some gangsters in there. It's a comic novel. It's biographical fiction. I threw in a lot of stuff there, so I'm blending genres in this book.
There you go. And I'm reading the description here on it, and it says he must overcome writer's block, defeated. That seems pretty challenging. Defeat a gypsy's curse. We've all had to do that.
Yeah.
Foil a plot to assassinate FDR. Holy crap!
A lot of happens in Buffalo, man.
And recover stolen diamond rings belonging to an alcoholic boxing champion. We do that on Fridays around here. There's a lot going on there, man. I thought the writer's block was hard enough.
There's a lot of balls in the air with this novel. A lot of subplots, but it was a ton of fun to write, and hopefully it's going to be a ton of fun for the readers.
There you go, balls in the air. That's also what we do around here on Fridays. I don't know what that means. It's exercise balls, folks. Don't write me. Those ones you get at the gym, the big ones. So there you go. And there's a lot going on there. And so do you make up it says something about who was that masked man? Do you concoct, or do you use historical data on how he came up with the Lone Ranger?
Well, not how he came up with it. That's where I come in with the magical realism. But it is based in historic facts. And Striker died in the early 60s, and he donated all his papers. His estate donated all his papers to the University of Buffalo, my alma mater, as well as his. So I was able to go there. There's like 30 cartons of this stuff, old radio scripts, his notes. Really? Telegrams. Oh yeah, it's really cool stuff. I mean, I had to put on the white gloves and hold the original Ranger script in my hand. Wow. So there's a lot of facts about the Ranger and Striker in dealing with George W. Trendle, the man from WXYZ who bought the rights. Mm-hmm. But where the fiction comes in was how he came up with the Lone Ranger story, and that's where the magical elements come in. The boxing champion who lost his diamond rings, the curse, all that stuff comes into play. But that's all my imagination.
There you go. Now, you said that there's kind of some noir to it, and the cover has a picture that kind of looks like something out of Humphrey Bogart's a detective officer noir. There's a Scotch on the Rocks or something, and Whiskey on the Rocks, maybe an old typewriter and some books and radio. What sort of noir do you have in here? Just that kind of yesteryear noir? Or?
Yeah. So there was for decades, the local mafia head in Buffalo was a man named Stephen Magliano, and he ran the mob here for decades. And so I put him in the book too. There you go. So I got the gangsters, I got his crew kind of muscling in, and I really just wanted to make it a fun book. So I pulled historic figures who lived in Buffalo, and I made them characters. So the boxing champion is Jimmy Slattery, who was a light heavyweight champion, and he was an alcoholic, and his career didn't pan out the way it was supposed to, but he was champion. He did live here around the same time as Striker did. I have no idea if they ever crossed paths, but I put him in. Same thing with Magliano. I doubt Fran Striker, a radio script writer, ever went up against the mob, but I had him in there. And hey, FDR was just elected to his first term. Why not have him in there too and come to Buffalo for a visit?
There you go. I mean, back then everything was kind of small townish sort of thing. Yeah. Everybody kind of knew everybody. So there you go. And it kind of creates a thrilling story, I guess, of all these different characters and all the different things they're up to.
Well, I hope so. There's a capers involved, trying to get back these stolen rings. There's a man with a very small chin who wants to assassinate FDR. Stryker has a writer's block, which is total fiction. Fran Striker never had writer's block a day in his life. They estimated that in the 1930s, he was writing 60,000 words a week for all the radio
Holy
scripts.
Crap.
Yeah, comic books. He was doing it all, comic strips. So that's like a short novel every week he was churning it out. Pulp Fiction stuff, but still. So that he's got to overcome that. So there's a lot going on in the book, but I think it's going to be interesting to the readers is everybody knows all the Lone Ranger tropes, right? The mask, silver bullets, the horse, silver.
Tonto,
yeah, Kimusabi. So all that's in the book. Those tropes and elements are there, but Stryker has writer's block, so he doesn't realize it yet. The readers go, oh, silver bullets, or a big white horse. Stryker's kind of clueless until the end of the novel when he starts putting everything together. So I think I had a great time writing it.
There you go. I think I hear a wagon coming 2 miles away.
Well, interesting. Tonto wasn't introduced until like the 10th radio script.
Oh, really?
The 10th episode, yeah. And they realized this is radio. We have to have him talking to someone else besides his horse. So come up with a friend.
That's also what we do around here on Fridays. We talk to our horse. That's interesting. I didn't realize it. I didn't think about it off the bat here. But, I remember hearing... I think you could get them at the library. You could get these old records back in the day, and they would play the old radio shows like Abbott and Costello and some of the old radio shows they used to do. And it started out on the radio with him, huh?
It did. It premiered actually here in Buffalo in 1933 on WEBR, which still broadcasts today.
Wow.
Yeah, and Stryker was a script writer for them. And as you know, back then at the radio stations, they had full orchestras, their own acting troupe, their own writers. It was the medium of the day. And that's where Stryker was working. He was in charge of radio dramas there.
There you go. Everyone gather around the radio and listen to them, and then listen to FDR go on about, whatever he went on about. I don't know. And the great radio era. When I was a kid, we used to get the records from the library and listen to the old replays of all these shows, Abbott Costello, Who's on First, all the radio bits, War of the Worlds from H.G. Wells, just all that craziness.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. And on satellite radio on Sirius, there's a station for radio classics.
Really?
And that's all they broadcast. Yeah. And they got all those shows, The Shadow.
The Shadow.
Yeah.
I love that show.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Only the Shadow knows.
They also play like the commercials in between sometimes, and those are hysterical to listen.
Like the old timey commercials.
Yeah, like from the 30s. They'll work them in there.
If you rub plutonium on you, you can get clean today and glowy skin. Order now.
That's right.
Wow, The Shadow. We used to listen to Shadow. I don't know where we would get it. I think it was still playing on radio. It was and who was that old radio host that used to round up with, and that's the rest of the story. He would set up the ending and be like, "No, after commercial break, we'll bring you the rest of the story." And then I forget
his name too.
Yeah,
I'll think of it about 10 minutes.
Somebody can write me for the audience on it. Only the Shadow knows. Only the Shadow knows. I'm gonna go back and listen to that. I've got Sirius XM boot up here, so I'm gonna have to go check out the classics.
Yeah.
But the Lone Ranger, all the different things that he goes into, what sort of why did you choose some of the characters in the book, or what were some of the character builds that you used on him? Did you study who he was and try and form a character of the main character, Fran Striker, or did you just kind of make it up the way you want it?
No, and there were some basic elements of his life and his personality that I wanted to include. So, first and foremost, he was a dedicated family man, taking in all those family members. He was a prolific writer and workaholic. They used to make him stop typing at his house, stop writing, because it was keeping everybody up at night. So his wife, his wife and neighbors gave him like this time slot where he could write at home, and then he'd go to his in-laws' house and type over there and drive them crazy.
Wow!
So those elements I put in there. The financial pressures I put in there, but the rest, his friendships, that was all my imagination, his inner workings of his mind. But a great book. His son wrote his biography called His Typewriter Grew Spurs, and it's been out of print for years. It's got a great cartoon on the cover, and I tracked it down in a little bookstore in Texas. And and that was a lot of information about his dad that I probably wouldn't have gotten from anywhere else.
There you go. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a really fun book to read, and you're planning on issuing in October?
Yeah, the pub date's October 3rd, but folks can pre-order it now through my website or anywhere they order or buy books. So, yeah, we're excited. We're less than 3 months away now.
There you go. Should we get a plug-in for your prior book, Rook?
Yeah, Rook came out last year. That's also based on a Buffalo guy.
There's a theme here going on.
Yeah, if you're familiar with William Kennedy's work, he wrote the Albany trilogy, Legs and Billy Phelan's Greatest Game and Ironweed, which won the Pulitzer, and it was made into a movie with Jack Nicholson. And all those are set in Albany, New York. And I thought that was really cool when I was growing up reading those, that he picked his hometown to kind of explore. And that's what I'm trying to do in Buffalo. So I came across this story. Excuse me. I came across this story about a man named Al Nussbaum. And he lived in Buffalo grew up in the 50s. In the early 60s, he was married, had his first child. And I'm going to cough again, sorry. And he robbed about 6 banks until his wife and the FBI figured out what he was up to.
And so he's robbing banks, and his family doesn't even know he's doing.
He's a small businessman, and he tell his wife, "Hey, hon, I'm going out of town for a couple of days on business." And his business was knocking over banks, and I just love that, And he went to the top of the FBI's most wanted list. Reader's Digest offered a $10,000 reward for his capture.
Holy crap!
So he had to go on the run. They found out who he was, and he kept robbing banks because he had this crazy idea. He'd get enough money and come back for his wife and baby girl, and they'd escape to South America and start over. So no spoilers. I won't tell you how it ends. But he does go to prison. But while he's in prison, and this is what really hooked me, while he was in prison, he became a writer, writing pulp fiction. You can't make this up, Chris. Pulp Fiction stuff, Alfred Hitchcock magazine, Mike Shane mystery magazine, Ellery Queen, a penny a word guy behind bars. And do you remember Scholastic Books?
Yeah.
He used to write Scholastic books.
Serious? From prison?
And so you'd bring home a book. it was him and Leavenworth writing them, or just as paroled from Leavenworth. So he gets out after like 14 years and goes out to California because he wants to work for movies and TV. But he's got to stop in Vegas first because he buried a suitcase full of money in the desert.
Really?
Unfortunately, they built like a shopping center over it. So either some construction worker went home with a big American tourister full of money, or it's still sitting there under sand and concrete today. But he did. He went straight. He made a living writing for TV until he passed away. I think he was around in his early 60s when he passed away. But a fascinating guy. And so I had to write about him too.
That's like a crazy ass story.
Well, there's a lot of interesting characters in Buffalo. You got to come visit.
Yeah. Well, Vegas grew so much so fast and still does. Yeah, that's crazy. You're just like, I don't know if that money's there or not.
Yeah, his start over money wasn't there. What was really interesting, though, is his daughter in the book is just an infant, and I got to meet her.
Really?
And
wow.
I consider her a friend. She lives a couple hours away in Syracuse, New York, and we've met a few times and exchanged emails. So yeah, that was a nice surprise that came out of writing this book.
There you go, and it got a lot of great reviews on Amazon. People really liked it.
Yeah, it was. It took me 30 years to get my first book published. So anything is gravy to me, Chris.
There you go.
1-star review, it's better than not being published. So
it's true.
Yeah,
or having 0 stars.
That's right. So yeah, Rook was well received, and hoping the best for Yesteryear.
There you go. And then Muscle Cars 2 in 2015 came out.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
I describe that, it's a short story collection. I describe it as 17 short stories about men making poor decisions. Semi-autobiographical.
Seems like there should be more stories than that. But
yeah, I had to stop at some point, right?
That's men are known for making crazy decisions.
Not the best decisions. So most of the stories are, I guess all the stories really are set in Buffalo. Even if I don't mention it, if you're from here, you'll recognize places like Volker's Bowling Alley, which also appears in Yesteryear, and Forest Lawn Cemetery, which also appears in Yesteryear. So if you're not, even if I don't mention it, they're all Buffalo stories. And that was the first book, and like I said, that came out after about 30 years of trying. I was really happy to see that one in print.
There you go. Did they demolish the Volker's bowling alley?
That's interesting that you asked that question, because it is up for sale. The owners don't want to reopen it as a bowling alley, and they will build to suit is the sign that's out front. Which is a shame, because it was a cool bowling alley and it had cool neon signs out front. And I used to play softball for them, back in the 80s. It was one of my favorite places.
There you go.
When they outlawed smoking in bars and restaurants in New York, about 20 years ago, I'd go to Volker's and they still have ashtrays on the bar. It's like the rules that really apply in Volker's.
Yeah. You gotta love it, man. Well, that's too bad. Some of these old classic places are, they're historic and they're cool.
It used to be a speakeasy in the day, and that was where my imagined Fran Striker used to hang out. At least in Yesteryear, in my novel, he did.
There you go. Well, everyone can pre-order the book. Anything more you want to pitch on the books we got coming out? You got the next one coming out in 2025. I'm glad you got that planned out. I need to plan my book for 2025.
Well, it took me so long to get here. I got to, write as many books as I can with the time I got left. But yeah, after Pearl, I call it my pandemic novel. It has absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic. I call it that because I started right when the lockdown started, and I ended it like 2 years later to the day, which is fast for me. But when you have nowhere to go,
That's true.
So I was alone in a big house with a little one-eyed dog. So I wrote a novel about a alcoholic detective with a one-eyed dog, and he wakes up on the floor of his hotel room because he's the house detective at the Hotel Lafayette, which still stands and is in existence today. And there's 2 shots have been fired from his gun, and he's been on a 5-day bender and doesn't remember firing his gun at all. And the police want to talk to him about a missing person. So that's when the fun starts. So that comes out in 2025.
There you go. That's also Fridays around here. Police want to talk to you on a missing body. How come it's being put out to 2025? Is that what your deal with your publisher?
Yeah, we didn't want Yesteryear and After Pearl competing with each other. So we spread it out over a 2-year period. So
there you go. There you go. Well, it'll be exciting to see the anticipation for that. And everyone can get their hands on October 3rd, 2023 of the new book coming out, Yesteryear. They can pre-order now wherever fine books are sold. And of course, Amazon has it as well. Give us your plugs, Stephen, before we go out. Any .coms you want people to go look you up at?
Yeah, www.sgeoannou.com, EOANNOU, or you can go to my publisher, SFWP, which is a lot easier to remember, .com, and there you can pre-order the books.
There you go. Is the one coming out in 2025 based in Buffalo too?
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's my turf. That's my
Run
turf.
with it, baby. I mean, there's a lot of history there. I mean, there's a lot of
and you know
people that
what?
come from there.
There's not a lot of people kind of exploring Buffalo. There's a wonderful crime writer, Lisa Redman, who used to be a Buffalo cop, and she's retired now. And she writes, she's out of South Buffalo, and she writes criminal procedures novels. But there's not a lot of people kind of mining this turf. So I'm claiming it.
There you go. Didn't Buffalo Wings get created in Buffalo?
At the Anchor Bar, yep, on Main Street.
Yeah,
they did.
Dude, that's a book right there. I'm getting hungry thinking about that book. Yeah. And you guys do blue cheese and not ranch.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I learned that. I learned
the hard way.
And somebody was telling me, they're like, hey, you don't eat ranch with wings. And I'm like, I don't know. This is what they always give me. And they're like, nah, man. And Buffalo, New York, man. It's blue cheese.
Yeah. It's like a religion.
Yeah. I was like, wow. Yeah. I was breaking the code of the religion. I was being, I don't know, whatever you call it.
I mean, they'll serve it to you, but they just won't think much of you if you.
Yeah. They'll just be like, give him the bad chicken from the back. So this has been really fun, Stephen, to have you on. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had a blast.
There you go. And everyone, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. You can see everything in the blog, of course, and the podcast posts up there as well. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, all the crazy places on the internet we are at, TikTok, etc., etc. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out, man.